Boba Fett is one of the most iconic characters in the Star Wars universe, a mysterious bounty hunter that intermittently appears as a tool of the Empire, injecting threat and menace for the rebellion and the story. And given his iconic status in the Skywalker Saga movies, it's no wonder Lucasfilm chose to bring him back in Season 2 of The Mandalorian, with Temuera Morrison's return generally welcomed by the fandom. And even more so when we see him at the conclusion of this season of The Mandalorian, killing Bib Fortuna to set up his own much anticipated series, The Book of Boba Fett. Yet the series was met with mixed reviews and audience reactions, with a Rotten Tomatoes audience score of 53%, significantly lower than the 91% score for The Mandalorian season that Disney reintroduced Boba. And against such mixed reactions, we must ask ourselves the reasons why this series was not more enjoyed, and what Lucasfilm and Disney can learn from this should they continue the Book of Boba Fett in a second season. To explore why the series was met with such a mixed response, we will explore what made Boba Fett such an iconic character in the first place and compare this to his evolved character in the Disney Plus series, to consider how else he could have been portrayed to deliver a more enjoyable series. And we will also compare this Disney Plus portrayal to his appearances in Star Wars fanfiction in the fanfiction galaxy. This galaxy represents the most highly viewed fan films on YouTube and can point us towards experiences that the fandom will want to enjoy in the future. First, let's consider how popular Boba Fett is as a Star Wars character. How much audience enthusiasm did Disney and Lucasfilm have to work with, and what likely led to their decision to produce the Disney Plus series? In this survey data from YouGov, we see a signal of this enthusiasm, with Boba ranked joint fourth as the best villain in the Star Wars movies alongside Jabba the Hutt, even outranking Kylo Ren, a villain who at this point of the survey data collection had appeared as a lead character in 2 movies. This is perhaps surprising given that Boba has only 5 lines in the original trilogy, less than 2 lines per movie. And we can put that lack of dialogue and screen time into context in this data visualization that counts the total lines spoken across all the Star Wars movies up to the Rise of Skywalker. And before we dive into this visualization, I need to give a big shout out to Archie KE, who collected this data, and I've tagged his original Wookieepiedia post in the video description. So what can we see in this visualization as to how much dialogue Boba has relative to other characters? Well, from the 8,707 lines across the movies, we see that the villains in the Sith and the Empire have less lines than the Jedi, Rebellion and Republic, and the criminals and civilians of which Boba is part of have even less. And across the villains in the Sith and the Empire, we see that less enjoyed villains speak a lot more than Boba. There are characters we would expect to speak more than Boba, such as Palpatine, with 181 lines. Yet Kylo Ren, a less recognised villain in Star Wars, has 105 lines. That's 20 times the dialogue of Boba. So with such a scant amount of dialogue for Boba, why is it that he is so loved as a Star Wars villain? Well, the first and obvious reason is that his armour is very cool. I remember with the toys that he was the one everyone wanted, because his armour posed questions. Why does he have it? Where did he come from? What does that rocket pack on his back do? Can he fly? But his coolness and iconic status is owed to much more than his armour alone. And although he has only 5 lines, they represent a lot about him and lead to the audience wanting more, especially in the dialogue with Darth Vader. Lest we forget, Vader was one of the most feared leaders in the Empire, killing at will his commanders that failed him. Yet, in his first line of dialogue in The Empire Strikes Back, when Vader tells him, "No disintegrations," Boba rather reluctantly accepts this order in a near dismissive way.
As you wish.
And when Vader plans to freeze Han in carbonite, Boba doesn't accept this and argues with Vader.
He's no good to me dead.
In this line of dialogue and the original voice from Jason Wingreen, we see near open defiance from Boba to a Sith Force user that could strangle him with a Force choke at will, yet he doesn't care. And I think it represents his confidence in his value to Vader as a bounty hunter, and consequently that he views himself as an equal to Vader rather than his servant. But it's in another moment with Vader we see everything we need to about Boba's mentality and why he has endured as such an iconic and loved character. And that moment comes after he raises his blaster to shoot Chewbacca as he tries to save Han from being frozen in carbonite. After Vader pushes his blaster towards the floor, Boba looks back at him. It's subtle, but in this look we see a bounty hunter who fears nobody and nothing, as if he's saying to Vader, "How dare you stop me from doing what I was born to do?" So it's with moments like this that I can understand why the fandom so enthusiastically welcomed Boba's return. But what interpretation of Boba did they get, and what can we learn from this that could explain the mixed audience reactions for the Disney Plus series? Well, put simply, we got a Boba that was less menacing and ruthless, and instead someone who chose to negotiate and compromise with his enemies and allies. A leader who said he did not want to rule with fear, but with respect. Now I can understand this approach from Lucasfilm. It would likely be difficult to dedicate an entire series to a mysterious bounty hunter that just went around killing people. And the approach they took with Boba had already worked well with Din Djarin, who initially seemed a cold, calculating bounty hunter, but evolved to a caring father to Grogu. But for me, the balance for Boba didn't quite work, because he gave in and compromised too often, to people who were also often his inferiors. Yes, there were moments like when he took it to the pikes when riding the Rancorn, but this is somewhat diluted by other moments like the cyborg Mos Espa biker gang, who he took in and added to his troops, or Black Chrysanthemum, who, having tried to assassinate him, he let go and then brought him into his entourage. It's in these types of moments we see weakness rather than strength and menace. And again, I can see what Disney and Lucasfilm were trying to do here, by showing that Boba could see the bigger picture. But in doing so, he lost his menace, especially with Chrysanthemum. There is no way the Boba Fett in the original trilogy would have let that slide. Rather than letting Chrysanthemum escape, he would have chased him across the galaxy to enact his revenge. And it's at this point we need to ask, how else could Boba have been portrayed in this series? And to answer that question, we can return to the Star Wars fanfiction galaxy, with the planets in the galaxy representing fan films uploaded to YouTube and the size of the planets representing the number of views at the date of publishing. When we explore the galaxy, we see that Boba appears in 7 fan films out of 88. Some are short, tokenistic appearances, and others he has a more leading role. And it's one fan film I'd like to highlight that shows another direction Disney could have taken, and that film is Star Wars: Wrath of the Mandalorian, a fan film produced and directed by Kelly Dolen and uploaded to YouTube in 2008. It puts Boba at the centre of the story, tracking down the last remaining Jedi on Kashyyyk during the reign of the Empire. It builds on Boba's original portrayal in the movies and takes it a step further, showing what we always suspected he was capable of. In the first 10 seconds, he kills and scalps a Wookiee on the battlefield. Then when tracking the Jedi, he breaks Plo Koon's neck, leading the remaining Jedi to retreat into the forest. He then disintegrates another Jedi with a thermal detonator, before interrogating another and shooting him in the head at point-blank range. And this is followed by an encounter with Darth Vader, where Vader calls him a vindictive child driven by his emotions, before saying his father Jango died because he was not worthy of the Mandalorian way. This leads Boba to fly into a rage, killing Vader's guards, before using a lightsaber to duel with Vader, in a precursor to Din Djarin's use of the dark saber. The fight ends in a stalemate, to which Boba tells Vader his price will be triple the next time he needs his help. in another moment showing his belief he is Vader's equal rather than servant. There is so much in this fan film and others in the fanfiction galaxy that could have been explored by Disney, and this theme of Boba taking contracts for the Empire before what we thought was his demise in the Sarlacc pit could well have been very fruitful ground to explore. And it could have been done in a similar adult certificate style to the Andor series. But at the same time, I can see a situation where Disney would have been criticised for not evolving the character of Boba beyond a ruthless bounty hunter. And while we could have been given a range of set-piece moments showing his skill and lack of mercy, it could also have been too one-dimensional, especially for more general audiences. Which brings me to my concluding thoughts, that there should have been more balance between the pragmatist and the bounty hunter, between the politician and the assassin, one where he could choose to barter with or obliterate his enemies rather than just constantly bartering. And why not produce this series for a more adult than family audience, one where Boba could really showcase his skill, guile and menace just as he did in this fanfiction film. And maybe that could be a more enjoyable and welcome direction for Disney to take in the future for this beloved and iconic character. I thank you for watching this Datatainer deconstruction. If you like what you saw, please drop a like for the video, and please let me know what you think in the comments. And remember, in the way of data and observation, we can save entertainment.